Welcome, everyone. I'm Diane with EdWeb, and it's my honor to introduce our presentation today with the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. I'm here with Kathy Metcalf, Vice President of Education for the Society, and our honored guest, General James E. Livingston, who received the medal for his service with the U.S. Marine Corps in the Vietnam War. And we're also joined by Mrs. Salvo's class and her students from Wando High School in South Carolina. And I want to thank everyone who's logged in today. We're going to start with a quick poll to see who actually is here. Okay, so if you're a teacher attending with your class, just let us know what grade level you are. It's elementary, middle, high school, college, university, or other. Let us know in the chat if you're none of the above. Thanks, everyone. You've logged in from all over today. Okay, well, it's pretty evenly split now between elementary, middle school, and high school. Okay, thanks, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Kathy.
Thanks very much, Diane, and thanks everyone for joining us today, and especially thanks to the students here at Wando High School in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Thank you so much, and to Mrs. Salvo, your teacher, who has just so generously put the work in to get this class ready for this experience. To those of you who are joining us across the country, thank you so much. Wow, Alaska, Indiana, I think I saw something from Columbia, Washington, all over the place. So thank you very much for being here with us. The point of today's webinar, as is always the case, is for students to have the opportunity to ask questions of General Livingston and for him to answer those questions for them. So adults, I saw in our poll that we have about 25% of people who logged on who said they are not with a classroom. And if you have questions, if we can get to them, that's great. But our first attention will always be paid to students. And the students here in the room with me have prepared a bunch of questions. So I'll be calling on them to ask their questions. And then we'll be folding in questions that come in from the internet while we're doing this. So let's go ahead and get started. I know that the students in this classroom have seen your video, General Livingston, and I wanted to share with our audience, both online and in the classroom, that General Livingston has a book. It's entitled Noble Warrior. I'll show this to the class as well. And this book it's from General Livingston's perspective. It has a little background about his story, focuses on the battle leading up to his being awarded the Medal of Honor, but then goes on after that with his military career and with his thoughts about the Vietnam War and the conflict since then. So it's a very good resource. I will point out, since we have about a quarter to a third of our audience is elementary today, this is a very challenging read. It is very military oriented and has a lot of acronyms. You have to keep looking up what those things stand for. Lots of zones in there that you refer to. Helicopter HLZs. I learned from this book that an HLZ is a helicopter landing zone, and that was just one of them. But it's got a lot of great stuff in it. But it is both a challenging read and it's also pretty graphic war description. So teachers think about your students' age appropriateness before you put that out there. It was definitely written for adults. So I know our high schoolers are capable of that. All right, let's get on to questions. I'm going to start with James here in the classroom. You have a question about General Livingston. Would you give us your question? Did you get your name? James wants to know how you got your name. Were you named after a family member or?
Yes, I was named after my grandfather. I got both of my grandfather's name. One was named James, and the other one was named Everett. So my name is James Everett Livingston from both my grandfathers, and they were wonderful men and two great role models for me.
Very good. Now, you grew up on a farm, and one of the students who didn't make it today was wanting to know if you could tell them a little bit about what it was like growing up in rural Georgia.
It is not like growing up in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina today. It was pretty interesting. All the things now you take for granted, we were not even aware of. your cell phones and your TVs and your cars and all that. I never even heard of them. All I knew was getting up at about 5 o'clock every morning and working before I went to school, coming home, even when I was in grammar school, coming home and working until I had time to go back and get into the books. And my mother always made sure I got in the books. But all the amenities, all the things you take for granted today, simply from the bathroom, the shower, televisions, and all that, we didn't have. We lived a very, very rural life, but considering the background where I came up, we were considered some of the most well-off people in that particular area of Georgia. And so life was rugged, life was beneficial, learn a lot about yourself. But you look at and how we transition to your experiences today, and I'll tell you what, I'd rather be at your level than mine back in those days.
Well, we're going to revisit that question later because I'm pretty certain that the way you grew up came into play a great deal when you were in Vietnam.
Very much so.
In the meantime, though, Caitlin has a question about the influence of your parents. Caitlin?
How did the influence of your parents during childhood influence your later decisions in life?
My parents were very different two people. My dad was very sympathetic, very easy on me, would deal with my problems in a total different way. My mother was the DI, the drill instructor of the family, and she had no sympathy for anything. But they were two great role models. The experiences I had with my parents have defined my life. And I guess I say my mom was my mentor, role model, disciplinarian. My dad was just a nice guy that would help along. But that the difference in the parents were very helpful for me because I understood both examples in my life experiences, and they were very helpful with me in raising my two daughters. So I was very benefited by those two different experiences and the role they set and how they really made sure that we lived as good a life as possible. They were very caring people, but their style maybe is a little different.
I'm smiling so much because I had the same in my family, and I really appreciate that dad was the easygoing one, and mom was the DI. I'd never called her a DI before. I probably would have been in trouble. Caitlin, you have a question. I'm sorry, Caitlin, thank you for that question. And then
That's a good question.
It was a very good question, and I think that will come up again too. Cameron, you have a question about high school.
Yes. What activities did you?
Activities I enjoyed in high school. Let me just tell you about the high school. I had 26 people in my graduation class, and the whole high school had only about 100 students. And the activities were very simple. We had basketball and we had softball, and that was it. The rest of it was a pretty strict curriculum, but very well defined. And civics was a big part of that curriculum. And government was a big part of that curriculum. We had to understand what this country was about. And that was sort of drilled into us the whole time we were there. How the government was set up, our responsibilities as citizens, and we had a chance to practice that in debate opportunities. So I really thought the experience in high school and the fact it was a small community helped define my life and made me really appreciate everything was great about America. And small, strong academics and strong expectations. And my teachers give me no slack, and I appreciate that.
Very good. Good question. Um, Denasia, you have a question that maybe he's already answered, but go ahead and ask it. She wanted to know what kind of music you listened to as a teenager and what kind of music do you listen to now?
You're gonna like my answer. I listen to 50 and 60 rock and roll, and you know what's on my radio right at this moment? 50 and 60 rock and roll.
All right.
So still a 50 and 60 rock and roll guy. I like the Beatles. I like Elvis Presley. I like all of those folks. And a lot of you probably never even heard of some of the people I listen to, but I like them all.
You play them really loudly in the
I
car.
play them really loud. They know I'm coming.
Very good. And just before we started, you got to talking a little to the students about college, and Will has a question about that.
Yes. What do you remember about being a student at Auburn?
Well, let me tell you first of all about my college experiences. I graduated from high school in '57 and went off to a military school at North Georgia College for a year. And I sort of got locked up, and the intent was my dad sent me there where I learned how to study. And then I decided I wanted to be an engineer, and the choice was between Georgia Tech and Auburn University. And I went down to Georgia Tech in 1958, and there was only 12 girls there. So I went over to Auburn, and I saw a totally different experience. And you know where I went to school, don't you? And it was an exciting time and during those days. And no such things as calculators and all that. I had a slide rule. How many know what a slide rule is? Probably none of you. And the way you always recognized an engineer at Auburn, he had a slide rule on his hip back in those days where he could calculate stuff. But Auburn was a very, it was a wonderful school. It was a wonderful experience. Everyone was very focused. And probably my biggest mistake is I decided to get in a fraternity. And I lived in the fraternity house the first year, and I shouldn't have done that. And I'm not going to tell you why, but I moved out of the fraternity the next quarter. But all that sort of come together and helped define my life. And the experience at Auburn was remarkable. And I go back every year, and I'm usually introduced at a football game. And this coming week, I'll be introduced at a football game then at Auburn University. And I always say Auburn is terrific. It was terrific for my maturity and growing up. Okay.
Super. Good question. Great answer. Thank you. So you graduated from college before you got involved with the military. What year did you graduate? May I ask what year you graduated from college?
I graduated in June 1962. But the reason I got in the military, I got drafted in 1961. And I could have extended and stayed in college, but I decided to go in the military. And I went to 2 boot camps in one summer at Quantico, Virginia for officers. So I spent 13 weeks from my junior and senior year up at Quantico, Virginia, wanting to be a Marine officer. And greatest experience, tough, a lot of memories from there, but it helped define my life and really made me feel strong about the Marine Corps and strong about the country and what I wanted to do with my life.
Very good. Austin, you had a question related to that.
What was your first thought when you received your draft?
My first thought when I received my draft notice, I can't say it on television, but it was a big decision, and I tell you the thing that swayed me and made me want to be a Marine. I went up and met a Marine officer at the student union at Auburn University. Listened to him talk, listened to his experiences, and it just sort of clicked with me. And even though college and going off to a job to be an engineer sound exciting, but it sounded more exciting for a young guy like me to have the chance to go to Southeast Asia, travel over the world, and have those kind of experiences. But all of it was a part of my life, and I think Auburn set me up for it, but the Marine Corps sort of placed me at a different level of experiences.
Ryan has a question related to that.
Why did you choose the Marines instead of the Army?
Because your draft notice came from the Army, right?
Their draft notice came from Uncle Sam, and usually you went into the Army. I tell you what, I knew nothing about the Marine Corps. I'm going to be very honest. And the Marine Corps, I just sort of heard of casually. But I had a chance to meet, first of all, a friend of mine who was at Auburn University, and he handed me this card about the Marine Corps. And I sent it off, and he said, you ought to look at the Marine Corps. And I said, I know nothing about the Marine Corps. But this major from Birmingham, Alabama, showed up in his dress blues, looking sharp, looking mean, tough, and said, we'll get you in great physical shape and send you off to boot camp. And just his mannerisms and the way he expressed his experiences in the Marine Corps, and just, like I say, how impressive he was and how he influenced me through that impression, personal impression. And I'll tell you, it's really important. First impressions are very important in life. And I think that's what I can say I learned from him. That first impression sold me on the Marine Corps.
You know, you are not the first person I've interviewed who joined the Marine Corps because of the uniform.
Yep.
I can't remember who else it was recently, but Woody Williams,
Yep.
World War II, said the Army recruiter talked to him, and then he saw the Marine Corps uniform. He said, "I'm not wearing that green thing." So you Marines clearly have the uniform thing cornered
the
here.
uniform thing, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Henrik, you have a question for General about joining the military. He asked what would be one piece of advice you'd have for someone who's thinking about joining the military.
I tell you, first of all, you have to decide what is important in your life. You second of all have to decide what is important for you to give back to your country. Do you want to give something back to your country? And I think sort of measure your response about if you want to go in the military based on those two factors. I expressed to you the reason I thought I wanted to go into the military based on my experiences with the major, but I also thought about my responsibility to my country. And I really emphasize to all of you and your audience here, think about what you want to give back to your country. That is part of your legacy. Think about what you want to make in terms of your legacy. What do you want to live behind? Do you want to be a giving person? Do you want to be a contributor? The next generation, do you want to make sure that they have the same opportunities that you have today because of the freedoms of this country? That was part of my experience in thinking about the military.
So Sydney has a question. Would you share your question?
Yeah, if you had to do it all over again, would you have chosen something out of the military area?
If I had to do it all over again, would I choose something out of the military area? Uh, I think I was really sort of sold on the expression of that major and how he talked to me. I always wanted to be an engineer, certainly, but I'll tell you, that was probably the greatest decision I ever made, and it carried me all through 34 years in the Marine Corps. But after I left the Marine Corps, I went into the business world. I've had that experience in banking and all those kind of things, and the Marine Corps helped prepared me for that experience. So the Marine Corps or the service does a great job in sort of maturing you in a way that you could never experience in any other place in our society. So I really commend that to you if it's only just for a short period. Okay.
So I'm going to bet, though, that having earned a degree in civil engineering before you went into the Marine Corps probably helped you somewhat be prepared for. Did it help you in any way be prepared
Oh
for the
yes,
military?
I tell you what, I really encourage young people to look at studying engineering. You know why? Because engineering teaches you to think in a logical sequence, where a lot of curriculums don't. As an engineer, you have to sequence your thinking process, and you have to go through steps of thinking and steps of how you want to make decisions. And engineering really teaches you that. You can't jump from here to there. You got to go through all those steps of thinking out a solution to a problem. And I tell you, that's what engineering does for you. And I really encourage all of you to look at an engineering curriculum.
Thank you. Desiree, you have a question for General?
Yes. Where have you been stationed and what was your favorite place to travel?
This might be a long question. Where have you been stationed? 34 years? Where were you?
I'm gonna just talk about the highlights. I was stationed in Boston, seagoing. I was aboard an aircraft carrier. I went to Vietnam 3 times. I was one of the few guys that what we call bookended Vietnam. I was there at the beginning of 63 and 64. I was there for the tail offensive, and I was the operations officer for the evacuation of Saigon when we came out. But probably the highlight of my experience in the Marine Corps, as far as staying at a location, we lived in London, England for 3 years, which was a great experience. We lived in the Philippines. We lived in California. We lived in North Carolina, Virginia. So we've had experiences all over the world, but probably London in terms of having that experience in another country. And my daughter went to school in London for 3 years, right out with the British people. And that just sort of helped carry her forward to ultimately be a student at the Naval Academy and graduated at the Naval Academy and became a doctor. And now she's a mold surgeon. And she still writes like a brick.
Does she talk funny
And
too?
let me tell you, this is the funniest story in the world. She talked like a Brit when we came home and we moved to Montgomery, Alabama. And in 6 months, she had the biggest twang that you'll ever experience in your life. She transitioned from sounding like a Brit to the most Southern girl you'll ever know.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Caitlin, would you ask your question?
What was your first thought when you received the Medal of Honor, and who was the first person that you told?
So when you first heard you were going to receive the Medal of Honor, what was your reaction to that? And who did you first share that with?
Well, believe it or not, I was stationed with the Army down at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was involved as an instructor, an airborne ranger, scout dog, all those kind of schools down at Fort Benning, Georgia as a Marine Corps rep. And the Army general told me I was going to Washington to get the Medal of Honor.
Really?
And not a Marine, but an Army general pulled me up to his office at Fort Benning, Georgia, and told me he was a wonderful man, a good role model himself. And certainly the next person I talked to was my wife, Sarah. She'd been with me all along. And by the way, my wife, when we got married, was at home for 2.5 years. I was deployed the first 2.5 years of our marriage. So she had been quite the lady. And so, being quite the lady, I had to share that experience with her and tell her she was very much a part of it. But the reason, let me just say, the importance of the medal is I lost a lot of Marines in Vietnam. And I always think about this medal as being just sort of a reflection of our experiences together. And I think all the recipients of the medal ought to remind ourselves that this is not ours alone. This is for all those people that didn't come home and have a chance to be fathers and grandfathers. Okay, very important that we really hold up the integrity of this medal.
Thank you for sharing that. Kayla, you have more questions about the medal?
Yes, ma'am. What were you thinking as you meet President Richard Nixon and receiving the Congressional Medal of Honor?
What were you thinking as you met President Nixon and were receiving that Medal of Honor?
Well, first of all, I was thinking, what am I doing here? And what am I doing in the White House having this great experience and having a chance to meet the president? But it was an exciting day. And to be in the White House and understand that's the center of power in this country and what historically has gone on in that building. And this man standing in front of me and how he represented this country was a very, very inspirational moment. I had my mom and dad there, my wife and daughter, my sister and brother. But I'll give you a little side story. My 3-year-old daughter was in my wife's arms, and the president came up initially to speak to her, and she wouldn't say a word or even respond to him. But as soon as the cameras came on, she had the cutest smile you'll ever see in your life. So she's a public affairs lady. She likes her photographs, and it started when she was 3 years old in the White House.
Boy, talk about starting at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw out a point here too. Miss Sarah, Mrs. Livingston, is you said Miss Sarah is quite the lady. She is
Yeah.
still quite the lady. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman, and very much involved with General's travels and such. Jovan has a question about, I think, one of the toughest questions about the Medal of Honor. Jovan, would you ask your question?
How did the Medal of Honor affect my life? I tell you what, let me just say this, and maybe I can frame it this way. I didn't let the Medal of Honor define my life. The Medal of Honor is part of my life. I wanted to be the person I wanted to be because of me and not because of the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor probably provided me some opportunities and experiences and was introduced to people like you I wouldn't have otherwise been introduced to. But I wanted to be a Marine or a person every day of my life. So my sort of comment to all of you is don't let one experience like playing baseball or whatever define your life. Be the person you want to be because of how you live your life on a daily basis, okay? Does that answer your question in a way? Okay.
That's a good question and a very, very good answer. We have some questions. I'll come back to questions from the classroom, but we also have some questions from the internet that I'd like
Okay.
to fold in. Someone wanted to know how long you were in Vietnam, which I think is probably a multi-part question because you were there more than once.
The first time I was primarily off the coast of Vietnam in '63 and '4, and the war was not heated up. I went in country a few times just to observe. The second time I was there for 9 months, and I got shot up and was medevaced and never came back for that particular tour. I was there for 9 months. The third time I went down and was involved in for about 5 months in the planning of the evacuation of Cambodia, Saigon, or the Vietnamese, and pulling out all the Vietnamese people we could. So that was a very critical time in our experiences in Vietnam. And concluded that with helping rescue a ship called the Maguez, and then a final event called Kotang Island, which I didn't land, and we didn't get there to be involved in. But that was my experiences, and like I say, I'm one of the few people probably bookended Vietnam.
So you were there on and off during the course of the war over a period of about 10 years.
Yes, that's correct.
However, that was only, looking back on it, it was really only a very small part of your entire time in the Marine Corps, which spanned 34 years. Correct?
Yeah, 34 years.
Okay. We have a few more questions. One was, how important was small unit leadership in jungle warfare? Now, this is a pretty specific question, students, because it's military, but I'm asking it because it's about leadership, and it's something that you can carry over into your lives now in the high school.
I think that's a great question, in terms of small unit leadership. I tell you, the thing that characterizes the Marine Corps and the military in general is the young people called non-commissioned officers and staff there, non-commissioned officers. They are really the key element of leadership, and they're about probably 19, 20, and 21 years old. And they determine how well we function. As a general, I can tell a lot of people what to do, or the captain can tell a lot of people what to do, but the execution of whatever that requirement is dependent upon the quality of leadership of the young non-commissioned officers in the Marine Corps today. When we don't perform, if they don't perform, we don't succeed if they don't lead. So the young leadership right at the bottom defines how well we are in the business world, also in the military.
And would you say that's true across the branches as well?
Across the branches, and I think it's true in the business world too. And so learn the fundamentals of leadership by looking yourself in the mirror and measuring yourself against those fundamental qualities of what you respect in a person and how they react to circumstances. You need to start learning to lead now, okay? Don't wait till you graduate or till you finish college. Think about your role at this school in terms of leadership and influencing your peers. That determines the extent of a leader you are. How do you influence people and get them to do things responsibly? Okay.
Okay, great answer. Somewhat related, somebody else asked whether you learned any Vietnamese while you were in Vietnam. Did you learn to speak any
I
Vietnamese?
learned about, I think, 5 words: Chu Hoi, Dai Wei, and a couple more. But Vietnamese is a hard language to learn, and I just didn't have the experiences to interact with the Vietnamese. And all the Vietnamese working with us had a pretty good comprehension of the U.S. or English language. So I'm sorry to say I should have learned more Vietnamese, but I did not.
Well, from talking to a number of Vietnam veterans, I've found that those who were embedded in out of the way places were more inclined to
Mm-hmm.
be in, to have learned some Vietnamese, but it depended very much on the job that you had
Circumstances
there.
you're in. A lot of them were advisors, meaning they were embedded in Vietnamese units. So one of the requirements is you had to speak Vietnamese. So you went to a school before you deployed to Vietnam.
Takes a lot of jobs to make the
Yeah.
military run.
Yeah.
Someone else from the internet asked if you might have seen the Ken Burns Vietnam documentary, and if so, if you think it was an accurate depiction of Vietnam.
I guess I can't be politically correct here. I saw some elements of it. Some of it was very accurate, portrayed, I think, good accuracy about the war. Some of it I was a little bit dissatisfied with. I thought it had sort of a Hollywood, or it tried to manage a message or a narrative I didn't agree with, okay? I didn't agree with some of the contents of it and what he was trying to say and portray, and that's just me. Some of it was good, some of it was not up to my standards.
And I think that as is the case whenever anyone writes a book about an event, especially if it's something they were not personally involved in, or when they try to make a movie about it, there are going to be different perspectives shown in that. And I think that that's a very important question for us to ask our Vietnam veterans so that we can hear what you do agree with and what you don't agree with. So thank you for answering that question.
I think, yeah, as I could say, anytime you hear anything and it's not something that you apparently fully aware of based on your proximity to wherever the event is, don't mind challenging. Never mind challenging the narrative that you hear about. You see it all the time on the TV and news programs. Don't mind challenges. Don't accept everything for face value, okay?
That is a great piece of advice. And I'm going to bet that for those of you here in this classroom and those of you who are watching with your teachers, I was a teacher for years, and you don't become educated by only repeating what other people tell you.
That's a great.
You become educated by asking questions and finding out why and discovering the evidence that what you are learning is the truth. You want to find out the public reasons for your private convictions. Then you'll know you're educated.
I tell you, sort of an expansion of that. That's what makes this country greater in contrast to other countries. If you go to many of these other countries, they're sort of in lockstep with the narrative of the government. There are people that are not afforded the opportunity to challenge what's being said. You've got a great opportunity in this country to challenge those kind of activities or events in this country and not accept them for the gospel, okay?
Very good. Aiden, you have a question for General Livingston?
Yes, ma'am. What have you been doing since you left the Marine Corps? Like, was it hard adjusting to life after you spent like 30 something years in the Corps?
Well, let me take the lesson. The adjustment from the Marine Corps to civilian life, I found very easy because I graduated from the Marine Corps one day and went to work in the business world the next day. And I found myself very actively involved in the business world, enjoying it as much as I did in the Marine Corps. Okay. So I've been involved with the business world. I'm currently, if you're familiar with banking here in Charleston, I'm a board member and an owner of a bank called Beacons Bank. And so I'm involved with that. And I really enjoyed the transition from the military world to the business world because I found out the secrets of success in both areas is knowing how to deal with people. And if you know how to empower people and give them authority and responsibility, you can be successful in both locations. Okay. Again, about knowing people in leadership. Okay.
Would you share with the students both online and the room your idea about leadership? You profess it in the book, and you talk about what do you think is most important about leadership?
I think the most important thing about leadership is setting the example yourself. If you're not willing to walk the walk of leadership and be the example and look yourself in the mirror and see if you're asking someone to do something that you wouldn't do or something, commitment that you would not make that you're asking them to make. I think the most important element of leadership is that personal example. So measure yourself against how you want people to perform under your leadership. Okay.
In his book, General Livingston says, I knew that if I was willing to go there, I could ask others to go there as well. So thank you for that. We have a fun question from Madison Middle School. Somebody wants to know what your favorite C ration was while you were serving in the military.
Favorite C ration was ham and lima beans because they would They were sort of a little bit taste like home. The rest of them didn't taste too much like home. Sort of bland. But I always remember, you know, a little Tabasco sauce on that and a little onions on it. And ham and lime must taste pretty good after you doctored them up a little bit.
There we go. So there's a piece of advice. Always carry Tabasco. Right?
Always carry Tabasco.
All right. Lewis, you have a question for General Livingston.
How often do you wear your Medal of Honor, and do people recognize you on the street?
Probably how often I wear the Medal of Honor, I probably appear in some sort of function a couple of times a week and have the opportunity to wear the Medal of Honor. And as far as people recognize me on the street, at least I'm not in the post office, okay? So a lot of people here in, around the country know me, and good or bad, and I think I feel good about people being recognizes me around Mount Pleasant, around the country, and probably quite often, really frankly, because I've been out there so much talking to people and having so many good experiences with people.
Okay, great. Kai, you have a question for General Livingston.
Do you keep in touch with any of the people you served with as a Marine?
A question, keeping in touch with the Marines served with me, I have, as I was telling Kathy, I probably get 2 calls a week from the people that were in my company in Vietnam. And they just talk to me the same way they did when they were your age or a little bit older than you were. Have all those great experiences. And something about, and I'll tell you this is sort of a little sidebar here. When you experience those life-threatening experiences with an individual, you become closer sometimes than you are to your family. It really defines your life in terms of that particular person. And that's the unique feature about being in combat with a person. They become bigger than a brother. And so we talk all the time, and I talk about different things, but you know, always talk about that experience in Vietnam and how we lived through that experience together. And it really helps define you in terms of your relationship with them. Okay.
One of our internet viewers wanted to know what you like best about being a veteran, and this seems like an easy transition from you talking about the people you keep in touch with to being a veteran. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I tell you, I think the thing you do is you transition from the Marine Corps. You sort of go from in uniform to out of uniform. But I think the thing you have to bear in mind is a veteran, you always have responsibility. You never move away from that responsibility to your country, to young people like you. You always want to give back. And I tell you, I think that's the thing I sort of want to portray that actively you see veterans involved. You go to any place and you always see the veterans out there carrying the flag, being a role model, willing to come to school. So you're always giving back, and you garner that experience through your experiences in the military. So it's been very helpful. You want to always give back and be part of your community in a strong possible way.
Jaquan, you want to try your question? I think it's partly answered, but okay. Jake, I'm going to repeat that question because we had trouble hearing you. How is your life now, and how have you been spending your retirement? You know, in addition to being on the board of directors of a bank and
Yeah.
talking to students and wearing the medal twice a week, other things you're doing?
Well, I do. The quick answer is, what am I doing? I do a lot of appearances around the country, and I'm probably doing 3 this week in various locations of the country. A couple of weeks ago, I was in 7 cities around the country. But I involve myself still in the business world and doing the appearances. But I got 3 grandkids, and they'll soon all be in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm enjoying being a grandfather, you know, and having that experience with my grandkids, and that sort of takes up all my time. The other thing is, I work out a lot. I spend about an hour and a half a day in the gym working out. So that sort of captures my whole day. And I like to read, and all those part of my experiences at currently go. I stay well occupied.
You are keeping me busy. Now, one of our internet viewers asked this question. I wouldn't ask it. So if you don't want to answer it,
Yeah.
you say so. Someone asked how old you are.
The 12th of January of this coming year, I'll be 80 years old. I'm a young guy.
He is a young guy. And you notice he said he works out an hour and a half a day.
Just got off the treadmill before I came out here.
Very good. Let's see here. I think, Kyrell, you have a question?
Growing up, you lived on a farm. Do you have a garden now?
Growing up, raised on a farm. I live in a condominium now. I don't have any yards, any hot tubs, any pools, or any boats. So to answer your question, no, I don't have a garden.
So at the time that you were growing up, I read in your book that your family's farm was about 3,000 acres.
It was
right?
about, yeah, it was, we had one of the biggest farms in Georgia. And we had every experience in a farm that you can believe. But let me tell you a little interesting story. The first way we had available when I was growing up in the 40s, we didn't have tractors. We had 22 mules. So one of my responsibilities was to pump water every day for 22 mules. And so I went through all that. So I had all those experiences going from mules to all these advanced tractors you see on television today. So it was a pretty exciting life, in terms of growing up. And we had everything, hogs, cows, everything that you can imagine on a farm.
Did you notice that he didn't say that he just like filled the bins or the water dishes for the mules like we all do for our dogs? He didn't turn it on. He pumped water for the mules. Yeah.
We didn't have an electric pump. We had me pulling a handle.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had a brother, and he was 4 years younger than me, and he died at 50 years old, unfortunately. So I don't have any living siblings today.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
How old are your grandchildren who are about to move to Charleston?
Well, the one fixing to move here is 9 years old. I got a grandson in Mount Pleasant Academy. It's 12, and I got a granddaughter down in Ashley Hall that's in the 10th grade, and she's 13.
Very good. Good ages. So you travel a lot around the country. Do you ever get to take any of the grandchildren with you?
Yeah, I think the last time I took my grandson with me was up for the Major League game up in Washington. It was an All-Star game. I took my grandson out there, and I'm not sure I'm going to take him again because he eats too doggone much. Everyone said that kid eats more food than I can believe. They wanted to send me out of the way to get my grandson Charlie out of the chow hall there.
Oh my goodness. Haley, you have a question for General Livingston? Did you hear her? She said, "What is the best advice that you have ever received?"
Raise the bar and challenge yourself. In other words, you look yourself in the mirror and you challenge yourself to be better the next day than you were the day before. So when I get through with you, I'm going to say, stick your hands up and raise the bar of your life. Challenge yourself beyond your expectations.
That is a great piece of advice. Someone from our internet has asked, "Do you have a lot of other medals and/or awards?"
I do, and I'm just, if you're familiar with medals, I've got the Silver Star, which is it's the third highest award. Then I got the fourth, which is the Bronze Star, and I've got 3 Purple Hearts. It's just an example. Then I got a lot of what you call service awards, based on my performance at various locations.
Those service awards come from different campaigns that you were involved in, right?
Different assignments,
Different
yes.
assignments that you had.
I had assignments in the Pentagon. I got one. I got them while I was seagoing. I got them involved with the evacuation of Vietnam, and that's an example, that I've got what I call performance awards in my. And normally they give you a final award based on your career performance, and I've got an award for that.
How soon after after your Medal of Honor action were you actually awarded the Medal of Honor?
The process is very deliberate and very long. It takes about 2.5 years And probably the most vetted award in the world is this award here. It has to go through all kind of layers of bureaucracy. It starts with your unit, it goes to your commands all through the Marine Corps, then it goes to the Secretary of the Navy for Marines, it goes through all through the Secretary of the Navy, then it goes through all through the Department of Defense, then it has to go to Congress. And Congress authorizes, the president signs it, and the president awards you to. It's about a 2.5 year process, and there cannot be any mistakes made. And you are vetted at every level before you're authorized to wear the Medal of Honor.
And I would point out that General Livingston mentioned that it starts with your unit. Unlike other medals, the person who is awarded the Medal of Honor is recommended for it by the others who were at the scene of the battle with him or her.
You have to have 3 eyewitness recipients, and there are probably a lot of people who should get the medal never received the medal because they didn't have the 3 eyewitnesses to observe the action. Okay.
So I've heard Medal of Honor recipients say that as important as this medal is, it also is a reminder of the worst day of their lives. In the sense of in terms of intensity of what went on. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I tell you, it can be the worst day of your life, but it can be one of the greatest days of your life because you see what a human being can do beyond their expectations that they could do. And you also see how human beings take care of one another and inspire one another. So it's both levels of extreme experiences. It's the worst and the best. And you see that in these kind of circumstances.
Super, thank you. One of our viewers online has asked what you think some of today's students face in terms of challenges. What do you see their biggest challenges growing up in the world that we're in today?
I tell you, the biggest challenge I see with students today, to include these in the audience, is picking your priorities. What is important to your life? You've got so many things that you're challenged with. I was not challenged with at your age. So you need to be able to pick and choose what do you want to do with your life with all these things that you are exposed to on a daily basis. So be smart and pick wisely, okay?
I have a family related question. I read in your book that your father did not survive to see you become a general.
That's correct.
But was he alive when you were awarded the Medal of Honor?
My father was alive when I was awarded the Medal of Honor. As a matter of fact, my father, shortly after I was notified that I was making general, went into surgery and didn't come out. He died in surgery at 73 years old.
What was his reaction when he heard that you were getting the Medal of Honor then?
I was not there. I was in the Philippines, but based on the reactions or comments I've heard from other people who were there, certainly he, considering he was a young kid that grew up in Georgia, that left school when he was in the 6th grade, and to see a member of the family, particularly, I guess, one of his sons, move from where he didn't have the experience to being a general officer in the Marine Corps was a very defining point in his life, like it was a defining point in my life.
And did your mom have any words about that?
She said you expected me to do that. No, she kidding. She was very happy. And again, my mother only went to the 4th grade. Her mom died, so she had to be the lady of the house all her life.
And that's a big job, being the lady of the house and
Yes.
of a big farm.
Yes.
Farm life is no easy job. Someone on the internet asked, who was your best friend when you were in Vietnam?
The best friend in Vietnam was every Marine that I served with, but the one that really just was the great example for me, and he was the oldest guy in the company, was the first sergeant of the company. He was the old man. He became a very close companion of mine, and I had the responsibility or honor to give his eulogy in California years ago, and I don't cry, but I'll tell you what, when I gave that man's eulogy, I had a lot of tears, and that's the kind of respect I had for him.
May I ask, when you refer to him as the old man, how old was he at the time?
Well, I was 28, and he was probably about 33.
That's why I asked that question. That's 33 is not very far away from those of you who are watching and are in high school. I know it sounds like it's the opposite end of life, but 33 isn't very far away. But that's in combat years. That's old.
Yeah.
Old, because so many of the people who are fighting are in perhaps still teenagers.
Mm. Most of them are teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's go back a little bit. You talk a lot about discipline and leadership, and discipline was extremely important to you when you were in the Marine Corps.
Yes.
Can you tell our students a little bit about why discipline was so important to you and for your Marines?
I think discipline forces you to make critical decisions about what your priorities are. And if you're not disciplined and able to deal with all the information, all the process around you, and make good, strong decisions and follow through on those strong decisions, and expect people to react in a positive sense, that sort of, to me, sort of characterizes discipline. And if you don't have strong discipline within your life, you're never going to reach the expected level that I would expect, or you should expect out of your life, because people who are unorganized, not focused, and don't discipline themselves in life never reach their potential.
Keep in mind, we're talking about, as General Livingston just said, that self-discipline that you use to help yourself get things done, not the kind of discipline that is enforced upon you when you have already messed up something and gotten in trouble. So discipline on the front side is far more effective and more important than discipline on the back side. So we're not talking about punishment. We're talking about self-discipline.
Personal discipline. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I would say that from what I've heard from you and many other veterans is that discipline can make the difference between life and death in a combat situation.
Discipline can define life and death, but it also can define whether or not you're successful or unsuccessful in life. So discipline is one of the most important components of your life. Personal discipline. And it can be measured in a lot of ways, and it's up to you to decide how you want to measure personal discipline. Okay.
So we've talked about discipline and priorities. We've talked about leadership. One of our listeners has asked, what do you think is the most important value students can have? And of course, the Medal of Honor Character Program, which the Medal of Honor recipients chose the values for that, includes courage and integrity, sacrifice, commitment, citizenship, and patriotism. Do you have some thoughts on what you think is most important for students to have?
I think for the whole country, for everyone that lives as a citizen in this country, the most important character traits you can have is integrity. Integrity. If people don't believe what you said, you'll never realize your potential. So always tell the truth about the circumstance. Okay. Ultimately, if you don't, it'll catch up with you, and it may define your life in a way you don't want your life defined.
Thank you. We have just a couple minutes left. Are there any more last minute questions here from the class or from the internet that you would like addressed? I've seen, as we've been sitting here today, by the way, I want to just give a shout out to a number of people who have said hello, General Livingston, on our messages over there, but it's kind of far away and I couldn't read who all their names were. But thanks all of you for joining us, both students and teachers, as well as those of you who are not involved directly in education, for being here with us today. Was there another question out here? Yes, sir. Yeah? Yes, sir.
Do you have any hobbies?
Do you have any hobbies?
That's always a good question when people ask me. I guess my biggest hobby really is sort of grandkids these days. When I was growing up, I used to enjoy fishing and hunting and all those things, but I enjoy being with the grandkids. And I just enjoy just the daily activities I'm involved in. I'm just not a hobby person, if you will. I'm not the guy who can saw wood and play golf and all that kind of stuff. That's sort of boring to me. I got to stay fully engaged. And so the answer to your question probably is not very much of a hobby guy.
It seems to me that you're a little too busy for hobbies because I invite General Livingston to come to things like this, and he's always willing, but he's not always available by any means because he is so busy doing other things like this and being involved in civic things as well. Um, Someone wants to know, what would you say is your biggest life accomplishment?
I think I like to hopefully define my life through the success of my two daughters. Both of them have been very successful. As I said, one was a Naval Academy graduate, she's a doctor. The other one is a graduate from Tulane University in New Orleans, and Villanova. She's got a master's, and I guess the second one is the grandkids, and I got certainly a beautiful wife, but two wonderful son-in-laws. So I've got a very, very active, very accomplished family in every sense of the world, which I'm particularly very proud of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, General, for your time today, for sharing that with us, for sharing with us so much of what is important, not just as your Marine Corps career, but as your personal family life as well. I appreciate that. Students, thank you for being with us.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to turn this back over to Ed Webb to wrap things up for us.
Yes, thanks, Kathy, and thank you so much, General Livingston, for your service and for sharing your thoughts with us today. It was really inspirational. I want to also thank the Congressional Medal of Honor Society for helping us make this possible, and to Mrs. Salvo's class, and to everyone who logged in today.
Just tell everyone Semper Fi, which means always faithful.
Semper Fi. And we invite you to visit the Medal of Honor Character Development Program online. There's all sorts of resources there you can find. And join us for the next CMOH recipient interview. That's in December with Michael Thornton. Again, if you join the community at edweb.net/CMOH, you'll automatically get an invitation to that presentation. And again, we ask you to join the community, the Medal of Honor Character Development Program. As a member, you'll be able to access all the community's resources. You can view past webinars, earn more certificates, download slides, and get a transcript of chat logs, join discussions, and get more resources. Again, that's the community at edweb.net/CMOH. Well, thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you next time.